Money is not fair. Money answers to power. If you are still waiting for your turn, you are someone else's capital. Today, I am giving you 9 Machiavellian weapons to bend the flow of money toward you. Let me destroy a comfortable lie you have been told your entire life. Hard work equals wealth. It does not. It never has. History is littered with brilliant minds who died broke and mediocre landlords who died rich. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago when he wrote, "Men forget more easily the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." Think about that for a moment. Your father dies, and you grieve. But take away someone's property, their assets, their wealth, and they will never forgive you. Why? Because wealth is power. Wealth is freedom. Wealth is the ability to shape reality according to your will. And people understand, at a primal level, that losing wealth means losing control over their own life. Money does not care about your intentions. It does not care about your morals. It does not care how many hours you worked. It does not care if you wake up at 5 in the morning or meditate for 3 hours or read 50 books per year. Money flows toward power, strategy, and leverage. And today, you are going to learn how to command it. Understand this. Wealth is not a moral game. It is a strategic one. The people who accumulate money are not necessarily the smartest or the hardest working. They are the ones who understand the hidden mechanics of how value flows, how perception shapes reality, and how timing creates opportunity. I have watched this play out hundreds of times. 2 people start with the same resources, the same education, the same opportunities. 10 years later, one is wealthy and the other is still struggling. What is the difference? Not intelligence, not effort. The difference is that one person learned to play the game strategically, while the other kept believing that fairness would eventually prevail. What I am about to share with you are 9 weapons, not theories, not philosophies, weapons. Each one comes with a micro-action, something you can test within 60 seconds, something that will immediately shift how you operate in the world. These are not comfortable truths. They are effective ones. And effectiveness is the only currency that matters when you are trying to bend money toward your will. You might resist some of what I am about to tell you. That resistance is natural. You have been conditioned your entire life to believe in fairness, in karma, in the idea that good things come to those who wait. But look around. Is that what you see? The wealthiest people in the world are not the most patient or the most moral. They are the most strategic. And if you want to join them, you need to start thinking like they think. The first weapon is silence. Most people are terrified of silence. They rush to fill every gap in conversation with words, explanations, justifications. This is a mistake. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. When you stop talking, the other person feels compelled to speak. And when they speak, they reveal information. They show their hand. They make concessions you never asked for. Let me give you a concrete example. You are negotiating a price. The seller quotes you $10,000. Instead of immediately countering, you stay silent. You let 5 seconds pass. Just 5 seconds. The silence becomes uncomfortable. The seller cannot help themselves. They start talking. Well, I suppose I could go down to 9,500. You have not said a single word, and you have already saved $500. That is the power of silence. But it goes deeper than negotiation. Silence is a form of dominance. Think about it. Who controls the conversation? The person who talks the most, explaining and justifying their position, or the person who listens, absorbs, and only speaks when they have something strategic to say? In every interaction, there is a power dynamic. The person who is comfortable with silence is usually the person with more power. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I would walk into meetings and immediately start pitching, explaining, trying to fill every second with value. I thought I was being helpful. I was actually being weak. The moment I learned to shut up, to ask a question, and then just listen, everything changed. People started revealing their budgets, their constraints, their desperation. They would talk themselves into agreements I never even had to push for. Here is your micro-action. In your next negotiation, whether it is a job offer, a price discussion, or a business deal, stay silent for 5 full seconds after the other person speaks. Do not nod. Do not react. Just wait. Watch what happens. Watch them fill the void with information, with concessions, with reveals they never intended to give. Silence turns you from prey into predator. The second weapon is unreadability. Every micro-expression on your face, every shift in your breathing, every tone variation in your voice is information, and information is power. When you are readable, you are predictable. When you are predictable, you are exploitable. The person across from you can see your excitement, your desperation, your fear, and they will use it against you. Think about poker players. The best ones have mastered the art of the blank face. Not because they are trying to lie, but because they refuse to give free information. The same principle applies to money. When someone makes you an offer, your first reaction tells them everything. If your eyes light up, they know they offered too much. If you frown, they know you are disappointed. Either way, you have lost leverage. I once watched a negotiation where a startup founder was meeting with an investor. The investor offered $2 million in funding. The founder's face immediately lit up. You could see the relief, the excitement, the validation. In that moment, he lost at least $500,000 in potential valuation. Why? Because the investor now knew they had offered more than the founder expected. If they had been sharper, they would have started lower. Contrast that with another founder I observed. An investor made an offer. The founder's face remained completely neutral. 3 seconds passed. Then the founder said, "Help me understand how you arrived at that valuation." No emotion, no tell, just a question. The investor, now uncertain whether they had offered too much or too little, began to justify, to explain, to inadvertently reveal their own thinking. The founder gathered information while giving away nothing. That is unreadability in action. Here is your micro-action. Before you respond to any counter-offer, any proposal, any deal, take 3 deep breaths. Steady your breathing. Neutralize your expression. Then, instead of reacting, ask one clarifying question. Can you walk me through how you arrived at that number? This does 2 things. First, it gives you time to think. Second, it forces them to justify their position while revealing nothing about yours. Practice this in your next job interview, your next sales call, your next negotiation. Become unreadable, and you become unpredictable. Unpredictability is power. The third weapon is predator patience. Watch a lion hunt. It does not chase every gazelle. It waits, it watches, it calculates. And when the perfect moment arrives, when the target is separated from the herd, when exhaustion has set in, that is when it strikes. This is how wealth operates. The wealthy do not react to every opportunity. They wait for panic, they wait for crashes, they wait for moments when everyone else is selling, and then they buy. Think about every major recession. While ordinary people were panicking and liquidating their assets, the wealthy were quietly acquiring. Real estate at 30% discounts, stocks at historical lows, businesses for pennies on the dollar. They did not get lucky. They practiced predator patience. They had capital ready. They had triggers defined. And when those triggers hit, they acted with absolute conviction, while everyone else was paralyzed by fear. The 2008 financial crisis is a perfect example. The average person was selling everything, trying to preserve whatever they had left. Meanwhile, investors like Warren Buffett were making billion-dollar bets on American banks and corporations. Why? Because he understood that panic creates mispricing. When everyone is terrified, assets sell for less than their intrinsic value. That is the moment to strike. But predator patience is not just about waiting for crashes. It is about refusing to act on impulse, on emotion, on desperation. It is about having the discipline to pass on 99 opportunities so you can go all in on the 100th. Most people cannot do this. They see an opportunity and immediately react. They chase, they grab, they act out of fear that the opportunity will disappear. This is prey behavior. Predators are different. Predators understand that true opportunity is rare. And when it appears, you do not hesitate. Here is your micro-action. Right now, write down 2 specific triggers that will force you to act. These are not vague feelings. They are concrete conditions. When my target stock drops 30% below its 12-month average, I buy. When my competitor collapses, I acquire their top 3 clients. Define your triggers now, while you are calm, while you are rational. Then wait. Do not act until the trigger hits. This is not passivity. This is the discipline of the predator. Most people act out of emotion. You will act out of strategy. And that is why you will win. The 4th weapon is leverage. If you are still trading hours for money, you are losing. There are only 24 hours in a day. Even if you are the best in the world at what you do, there is a ceiling on how much you can earn by selling your time. The wealthy do not sell time. They sell systems. They sell multiplication. They replace their hours with people, with technology, with capital that works while they sleep. Look at the difference between a gig worker and a platform owner. The gig worker drives the car, delivers the food, completes the task. They earn $20 per hour. The platform owner built the system that connects workers with customers. They earn $20 from 1,000 workers every hour. Same market, radically different leverage. The landlord does not fix the pipes. They own the building. The CEO does not write every line of code. They direct the team that builds the product. This is leverage. Think about authors. A traditional employee trades 1 hour for 1 unit of pay. But an author writes a book once and sells it 10,000 times. They created leverage. The work was done once, but the compensation multiplies. The same principle applies to software, to courses, to intellectual property of any kind. You create once, you sell infinitely. That is leverage. I remember the moment I understood this principle viscerally. I was working as a consultant, billing by the hour. I was good at what I did, and my rates were high. But I hit a ceiling. There were only so many hours I could sell. Then I took 1 month and created a course that taught what I knew. That course has now sold to thousands of people. I created it once. It earns while I sleep, while I travel, while I work on other projects. That is when I understood. Time for money is a trap. Leverage is freedom. Here is your micro action. Take out a piece of paper right now. List 3 repetitive tasks you do every week. Tasks that take your time but do not require your unique genius. Now, next to each task, write 1 way you could automate it, delegate it, or productize it. Can you hire someone on Upwork to do it for $20 per hour? Can you create a template or system that eliminates the need to do it manually? Can you turn it into a digital product that you create once and sell 1,000 times? Stop trading hours for dollars. Trade your hours for leverage. This is how you break the ceiling. The 5th weapon is narrative. People do not buy products. They buy stories. They buy identities. They buy belief systems. Apple does not sell phones. They sell the story of thinking differently, of being part of the creative elite. Tesla does not sell cars. They sell the story of being part of the future, of saving the planet, of defying the status quo. The product is just the vehicle for the narrative, and the narrative is what directs the flow of money. Think about religion. Think about political movements. Think about cult brands. What do they all have in common? A powerful narrative that people want to be part of. The narrative gives meaning. It creates identity. It builds community, and people will pay enormous amounts of money to belong to something that gives them meaning. This is not manipulation. This is understanding human nature. We are story-driven creatures. We organize our entire lives around narratives. The person who controls the narrative controls the money. Let me give you a specific example. 2 fitness coaches offer the same service, same qualifications, same expertise, same results. Coach A says, I help people lose weight through diet and exercise. Coach B says, I help burned out executives reclaim their body and their confidence so they can lead with energy and presence. Which one do you think charges more? Which one do you think attracts higher quality clients? Coach B. Why? Because they are not selling weight loss. They are selling transformation, identity, and status. The narrative is stronger. Every successful brand understands this. Nike does not sell shoes. They sell the story of athletic achievement, of pushing beyond limits. Rolex does not sell watches. They sell the story of success, of having arrived, of being part of an elite group. The product is secondary to the story. And the story is what creates premium pricing, customer loyalty, and word-of-mouth marketing. Here is your micro-action. Craft a one-sentence brand story right now. Use this formula. I help specific group become desired transformation by unique mechanism. For example, I help burned out. Entrepreneurs reclaim their time by building automated income systems. Write it, rewrite it, polish it until it is sharp, clear, and compelling. Then repeat it everywhere. In your bio, in your pitch, in your content, in your conversations. Your narrative is your magnet. Make it strong enough, and money will flow toward it. The sixth weapon is substitution. This is the art of getting others to execute your ideas, your vision, your commands, while you maintain strategic control. The boss organizes the workers. The workers dig the ditch. The boss makes 10 times what each worker makes, not because they are 10 times smarter, but because they substituted their labor with the labor of others. This is not exploitation when done ethically. This is system leverage. Every successful entrepreneur understands this principle. You cannot scale if you are the one doing everything. The moment you start building a team, the moment you start delegating execution while maintaining strategic vision, you multiply your capacity. One person can only do so much, but one person directing 10 people can accomplish exponentially more. This is substitution. Your ideas, amplified through the efforts of others. Let me be clear about something. Substitution is not about exploiting vulnerable people or extracting value unfairly. It is about recognizing that different people have different skills and comparative advantages. You might be brilliant at strategy but terrible at execution. Someone else might be excellent at execution but lack strategic vision. When you substitute your execution tasks with someone who is better suited for them, both parties benefit. You get to focus on your highest value work. They get paid for work they are good at. This is how economies function. This is how value is created. The mistake most people make is thinking they have to do everything themselves. They wear this as a badge of honor. I built this business with my own 2 hands. Great, but you also limited your business to what 2 hands can accomplish. The moment you learn substitution, the moment you bring in other people's hands, other people's brains, other people's time, you unlock exponential growth. Here is your micro-action. Identify one activity you currently do yourself that you could convert to delegate and monitor this month. Maybe it is social media scheduling. Maybe it is customer service responses. Maybe it is data entry or bookkeeping. Whatever it is, find someone who can do it for less than what your time is worth. Train them properly. Create a checklist or system they can follow, and then monitor the results rather than doing the work. This is not laziness. This is leverage. Your genius should be spent on strategy, not execution. Let others execute. You orchestrate. The 7th weapon is illusion. Value is not objective. Value is perception. A diamond and a rock are both compressed carbon, but one sells for thousands of dollars and the other is thrown in a driveway. What is the difference? Story, scarcity, ritual, presentation. In other words, illusion. This is not about lying. This is about understanding that the meaning people assign to something determines what they will pay for it. Think about luxury brands. The material cost of a handbag might be $200, but it sells for $20,000. Why? Because of the illusion of exclusivity, of status, of belonging to an elite group. The product is the same leather and thread, but the perception is completely different. The same principle applies to every market. 2 consultants offer the same service. One charges $500 per hour, the other charges $5,000. The difference is often not skill. It is how they are packaged, presented, and positioned. I once worked with a consultant who was struggling to charge more than $100 per hour. His expertise was solid, his results were good, but his positioning was terrible. He presented himself as available, eager, ready to help anyone. We changed 3 things. First, we made him harder to access. You had to apply to work with him. Second, we added ritual, a three-step onboarding process that made clients feel they were entering something exclusive. Third, we tripled his price to $300 per hour. What happened? Demand went up, not down. Up. Why? Because the illusion of exclusivity and value increased. People assumed that if he charged more and was harder to access, he must be better. This is not deception. This is understanding psychology. People use price as a signal of quality. They use scarcity as a signal of value. They use ritual as a signal of significance. When you control these elements, you control perception. And perception is reality when it comes to pricing. Here is your micro-action. Take one offer you currently sell and repackage it with ritual and scarcity. Maybe you turn it into a limited release, available only once per quarter. Maybe you add a ceremonial element, an onboarding call, a welcome package, a certification upon completion. Maybe you triple the price and position it as the premium tier. Test it, see what happens. You will often find that higher prices increase perceived value, which increases actual demand. Illusion must be consistent. Your narrative plus your appearance equals premium pricing. Master the illusion, and you command higher compensation for the same work. The eighth weapon is exploitation. Before you recoil at the word, understand what I mean. Exploitation, in this context, is the pragmatic identification and harvesting of waste, inefficiency, fear, and attention leaks in the market. Every market has waste. Every market has gaps. Every market has people spending time, money, or attention in inefficient ways. Your job is to find those gaps and monetize them. When people panic and sell their assets at 30% below value, you are exploiting their fear by buying at a discount. When people waste 3 hours per day scrolling social media, platforms exploit that attention by selling ads. When people do not know how to solve a specific problem, you exploit that knowledge gap by offering a solution. This is not unethical. This is observing reality and responding strategically. The market rewards those who spot inefficiency and convert it into value. Let me give you a concrete example. During the early days of the pandemic, everyone was panicking. Businesses were closing, stock markets were crashing, real estate prices were dropping. This was a moment of massive waste and inefficiency. People were making emotional decisions, selling assets they would regret selling later. The strategic players saw this as opportunity. They bought real estate at discounts. They acquired struggling businesses. They invested in stocks at historic lows. 2 years later, those assets had doubled or tripled in value. That is exploitation in action. Not taking advantage of people, but taking advantage of market inefficiency. Another example, most people waste enormous amounts of time on tasks that could be automated or systematized. If you create software, templates, or systems that eliminate that waste, you are exploiting inefficiency. You are not harming anyone. You are creating value by solving a problem. That is how capitalism works. That is how wealth is created. You identify a gap, a waste, an inefficiency, and you build something that fills it. Here is your micro-action. Create a waste map for your niche right now. Write down 3 things your target customers waste. Do they waste time on manual processes that could be automated? Do they waste money on expensive solutions when a simpler one exists? Do they waste attention on distractions when they need focus? Now, next to each waste, write one product or service you could create that extracts value from that waste. This is not about taking advantage of people. This is about solving real problems in exchange for money. That is how markets work. That is how wealth is created. The 9th weapon is withholding. Mystique is power. Scarcity creates demand. When you reveal everything up front, you eliminate curiosity. You eliminate tension. You eliminate the desire to move closer. The best negotiators never show their full hand. The best marketers never reveal the core mechanism until after commitment. The best strategists always hold something back. Think about product launches. Apple does not tell you every feature 6 months in advance. They build anticipation, they release hints, they create mystery. By the time the product launches, people are desperate to know more. desperate to be part of the experience. The withholding created the demand. The same principle applies to negotiations. If you reveal your bottom line immediately, you have no room to maneuver. If you show all your capabilities up front, you have nothing left to offer when objections arise. I learned this lesson from watching master salespeople. The amateurs would walk into a pitch and immediately dump all their information on the table. Every feature, every benefit, every case study. They thought they were being helpful. They were actually killing the sale. Why? Because there was no progression, no revelation, no reason to stay engaged. The masters were different. They would share just enough to create curiosity, then pause. They would answer a question, then ask one back. They would reveal value in layers, each layer requiring a small commitment from the prospect. This is not manipulation. This is understanding that people value what they have to work for. If you give everything away immediately, it has no perceived value. But if you make people lean in, ask questions, take steps, then each piece of information feels earned. And what feels earned has higher perceived value. Here is your micro-action. Redesign one pitch or offer so that the core mechanism is revealed only after a commitment. Maybe that commitment is a deposit. Maybe it is an intro call. Maybe it is signing up for a waiting list. Whatever it is, restructure your process so that people have to take a step before they get the full picture. This does two things. First, it filters out tire kickers who are not serious. Second, it creates a sense of exclusivity and progression. Mystery converts curiosity into demand. Guard your secrets. Reveal strategically. Withhold until leverage exists. Now, let me be clear about something. Every weapon has a shadow side. Silence can turn into loneliness if you forget how to connect authentically. Unreadability can spiral into paranoia if you trust no one and see every interaction as a battle. Predator patience can become paralysis if you wait too long and miss the window of opportunity entirely. Leverage can create distance from the work you love and turn you into a manager rather than a creator. Narrative can become delusion if you believe your own story too deeply and lose touch with reality. Substitution can breed resentment if you do not treat people fairly and create systems that feel exploitative. Illusion can collapse spectacularly if the gap between perception and reality becomes too wide. Exploitation can turn into genuine harm if you cross ethical lines and prioritize profit over people. Withholding can damage relationships if people feel manipulated or deceived. These are real risks. I am not going to pretend they do not exist. I have seen people use these weapons and destroy themselves in the process. I have watched entrepreneurs become so focused on leverage that they forgot why they started their business in the first place. I have seen marketers create such elaborate illusions that when reality hit, their entire brand collapsed overnight. I have observed negotiators become so unreadable that they could no longer form genuine human connections. The way you mitigate these risks is through discipline, through ethical guardrails, through contingency planning. You need accountability. You need people in your life who will tell you when you are sliding too far in one direction. You need metrics that keep you honest. You need regular self-examination. You need to remember that these are tools for creating wealth, not tools for becoming a sociopath. Here is what I recommend. Set clear boundaries before you start. Define what you are willing to do and what you are not willing to do. Maybe you will use silence in negotiations, but not in personal relationships. Maybe you will create illusions around pricing, but never around product quality. Maybe you will exploit market inefficiency, but never vulnerable individuals. These boundaries are personal. You define them, but you must define them before you are in the heat of the moment, before the temptation of easy money clouds your judgment. Here is your micro-action for balance. Set 3 accountability checks right now. Maybe it is a mentor you meet with monthly who asks hard questions about your methods and your motivation. Maybe it is a business partner who has veto power on certain decisions and can pull you back if you go too far. Maybe it is a metric you track that tells you when you are out of alignment with your values, like customer satisfaction scores or employee retention rates. Write them down, schedule them, honor them. Power without accountability becomes tyranny. Strategy without ethics becomes destruction. Build the guardrails now before you need them. Here is what most people miss. These weapons are not tactics you use occasionally. They are a way of being. They are an identity shift. You do not turn these on and off. You integrate them into how you think, how you speak, how you negotiate, how you build, how you relate. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice silence. Every deal is an opportunity to practice unreadability. Every decision is an opportunity to practice predator patience. The mistake people make is thinking they can use these weapons once, see results, and then go back to operating the way they always have. That does not work. These principles only compound when they become habitual, when they become part of your identity, when they become the default way you move through the world. Let me give you a daily checklist. 5 practices you can implement starting today. First, execute 1 5-second silence in a conversation. Just once. Feel the discomfort. Watch what happens. Notice how the other person rushes to fill the void. Second, delegate 1 task you would normally do yourself, even if it is small. Practice substitution. Experience what it feels like to have someone else execute while you direct. Third, refine your narrative. Say your 1-sentence brand story out loud 3 times. Make it sharper. Test it in conversation. See how people respond. Fourth, review your triggers. Check if any conditions have been met that require you to act. This keeps you calibrated to opportunity without being reactive. Fifth, withhold 1 piece of information in a pitch or negotiation. Practice the power of mystery. See how it increases curiosity and engagement. These are not grand gestures. They are micro-adjustments. But micro-adjustments compound. Do this every day for 30 days, and you will notice a shift. People will treat you differently. They will give you more respect, more space, more consideration. Opportunities will appear differently. Things that you would have chased before will come to you. Money will flow differently, not because the market changed, but because you changed how you operate at a fundamental level. Let me bring this back to where we started. Money is not fair. Money does not care about your hard work, your good intentions, or your moral superiority. Money answers to power. It flows toward those who understand leverage, who master narrative, who practice patience, who become unreadable, who know when to speak and when to stay silent. This is not a comfortable truth, but it is a useful one. You have a choice. You can continue operating the way you have been, hoping that eventually your turn will come, that someone will notice your effort and reward you accordingly. You can keep believing that if you just work a little harder, stay a little later, give a little more, eventually you will be compensated fairly. That is a beautiful belief. It is also a profitable belief for everyone except you, because while you are waiting for fairness, other people are practicing strategy. Or you can adopt the predator's mind. You can learn to be strategic, disciplined, and ruthless in your approach. Not ruthless toward people, but ruthless toward inefficiency, toward wasted time, toward missed opportunities. You can stop waiting for permission and start taking what is available. You can stop hoping for fairness and start creating advantage. Wealth is not given. It is quietly taken by those who learn to be unreadable, patient, and ruthless in strategy. This is a practice. It is not something you master overnight. It requires daily discipline. It requires willingness to be uncomfortable. It requires letting go of the comforting myths you have been told about how the world works. But that discipline compounds. Small strategic decisions made consistently over time create massive asymmetric results. Most people will never do this work. They will continue to complain about unfairness while refusing to learn the rules of the game. They will blame the system, blame the economy, blame their boss, blame their circumstances, and they will stay exactly where they are. You will not be one of them, because you understand now that money is not a moral equation. It is a strategic one, and you just learned 9 weapons to win. Subscribe, not for support, but for advantage. The next video reveals how to weaponize narrative to turn one view into one sale, how to build a story engine that converts attention into income automatically. This is not theory, this is methodology. This is the difference between creating content and creating capital. Try one micro action today, just one. Practice one silence. Delegate one task. Refine one piece of your narrative. Then tell me what happened in the comments. Not because I need to know, but because articulating your experience will deepen your learning. When you put language to the shift you experience, you solidify the lesson. You move it from concept to embodied knowledge. You now have 9 weapons. The question is not whether they work. The question is whether you have the discipline to use them. Most people collect knowledge and do nothing with it. They watch videos, read books, attend seminars, and their life stays exactly the same. Why? Because knowing is not the same as doing, and doing once is not the same as doing consistently. These weapons will work if you work them. They will compound if you let them compound. But that requires you to step out of spectator mode and into player mode. It requires you to take what you learned here and test it in the real world, where stakes are real and feedback is immediate. So make the choice. Stay comfortable and broke, or get strategic and build wealth. Let us find out what you are made of.